hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At 11 o'clock, this is the latest news from GB News. A man has been arrested after a car crashed into the gates of Downing Street this afternoon. Armed officers immediately arrested the man on suspicion of criminal damage and dangerous driving. The incident is not being treated as terror-related. Footage obtained by GB News shows officers dragging the suspect out of his car and handcuffing him face down on the pavement. The area was immediately cordoned off after the incident, but Whitehall has now since reopened. There are no reports of any injuries. An eyewitness said what he saw.
Police were very quick to respond. Children ran away panicking. We ran over in excitement almost with the cameras. And it wasn't long before the police had him out of the vehicle face down. We were pointing tasers at him. Maybe 3 minutes, there was like 10, 12 police vehicles, and it just seemed almost like emotionless. And then like they escorted him about 10 yards that way, and I got a video of him going across. He was white, grey straggly hair.
Meanwhile, Number 10 has refused calls for Rishi Sunak to apologise, despite failing to reduce net migration numbers, which has now risen to record levels. ONS data released today shows migration numbers rose to 606,000 net last year, even after repeated government pledges to bring overall migration numbers down. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, says the government will keep its promise.
Net migration is far too high. This is placing intolerable pressure on public services, on housing supply, and our ability to integrate people. We've made a very significant intervention this week, which will make a tangible difference, reducing the number of student dependents that come to our universities, because universities should be in the education business, not the immigration business.
Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak has welcomed the reduction in the energy price cap, describing it as a major milestone towards his goal of halving inflation. Ofgem has announced the typical annual household energy bill will fall to a maximum of £2,074 a year from July. That's a drop of £426 annually. Ofgem says the first price drop in 18 months reflects recent falls in wholesale energy prices. And just lastly, in the United States, the founder and leader of a far-right militia group has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for his role in the Capitol Hill riot. That's the longest jail term ever given over the January 6th incident that sought to keep Donald Trump in the White House. Stuart Rhodes was sentenced for seditious conspiracy. He claims he's a political prisoner who, like Trump, was trying to oppose people who are destroying his country, in his words. And finally, 9 people have been arrested over the disorder in Cardiff that followed the deaths of 2 teenagers on Monday night. 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans were both killed in the Ely area of the city while they were riding an e-bike. The police watchdog is investigating after CCTV footage emerged showing a police van following the teens before their deaths. 15 officers were injured and cars were set alight in the streets in the violence that ensued. All 9 people remain tonight in custody on suspicion of rioting. That's your latest news. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon and I'm joined by the least likely double act since Piers Morgan and Mizzy. It's Lewis Schaefer. There he is. And Paul Cox.
Look at that face.
See, I was meant to put Lewis second because he's inherently just funny. But, you know, he was meant to go Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer. Lewis, you've sold out of the calendar.
Yes, we've stopped. We stopped taking orders for the calendar, so you won't see an ad for the calendar. So we should have a very peaceful time on the show.
How are we going to fill sort of dead bits when we...
We could tell people to go to my Twitter account. We could do that. We could promote it, and we could maybe promote Paul's.
Maybe I could have a calendar.
Yeah.
Luce, come on, where's mine?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What is your can I ask him what his Twitter handle is?
We could do that later. What is it, Paul?
It's at Paul Cox Comedy. Thanks for asking.
Paul Cox Comedy. All right. Well, let's have a quick look at the front pages. So, the Daily Mail has, will anyone stop the eco-clowns? You can imagine what that's about. It's about eco-clowns. The Telegraph goes with mortgage rates shoot up amid bond chaos. The Eye has UK population set to overtake France for first time on record. The Financial Times, ministers look at reshaping pensions lifeboat fund to give boost to business. The Express has Rishi, I get it, you want migration down. He finally gets it, guys. And the Daily Star has invasion of the monster jellyfish, which is pretty much exactly what you'd expect. And those are your front pages. So let's have a look at The Guardian, Lewis, and this man that has crashed at Downing Street.
Well, you hate to start this early in the show. Man held after car hits Downing Street gates. And, I mean, it's a front page news that a guy hit the Downing Street gates. And obviously, you can't just bump into these gates. You got to make a left and then a right and then go straight in. But he hasn't been arrested. It hasn't been claimed to be terrorism. They haven't released why he did it. And it was a Kia. A Kia was the car. So this is a little too... I feel guilty. It's too early, but this is the first non-story of the night.
Ding.
Is this really a non-story? A man crashing into the Downing Street gates? That's a non-story? It seems quite big to me.
It's an automobile accident. If it was any other building, it'd be a non-story. If they say...
But it wasn't.
It wasn't, no. So you're
if it was your... Lewis, if it was your house, would it be a big story?
That would be a very big story for me. But at the end of the day, as we always say, and as us English people always say, is that the police have not said that it's a story.
No, they said they didn't say it was terrorism or anything. They said he's been arrested. He was sort of tasered. Paul, there was a person on the scene saying he seemed fairly emotional. It seemed like someone going through a tough time.
Yeah, well, I imagine he was. I was relieved to discover it wasn't terrorism and just a bog-standard friendly ram raid.
Yeah.
Because, you know, nothing terrifying about this whatsoever. Quite clearly, it was a deliberate act. Now, of course, I don't know where you start grading terrorism. It maybe wasn't that terrifying. But at the end of the day, this guy, you can see in the footage, he took a run-up, very, very slow run-up, and drove, perhaps because it was a Kia, I don't know, nothing against Kias, I'm really sorry, really slowly into the gates. And then the fastest thing to happen was the way the policeman got him out of the car and arrested him, handcuffed him, all in about 3 nanoseconds.
It's good to know the police can do their job in the right circumstances. You know what I mean? When like they're arresting people who don't want Just Stop Oil sitting in the road. They're very fast then, very fast on this. If it's a BLM protest, not quite as fast.
No, don't worry about it.
They were quite good on this one. But yeah, I mean, I was worried for a minute this guy was a sort of nutter who'd been radicalised online by Lewis Schaefer's Twitter account. But I just say it just doesn't seem to be that. So, and just briefly as well, just a quick note, the Guardian's managed to have Braverman plan to deport 3,000 asylum seekers each month, which is really a way to miss the massive story on immigration. Like, where's the story on immigration? Oh, it's this. So I was just very, very Guardian.
I did the math. That's 36,000 people a year. But can I just say something about the man who hits the 10 Downing Street, the gates to Downing Street complex? Is that I'm pretty sure there was probably a woman involved and 2 kids that he's not allowed to see.
Wow, men's rights activist Lewis Schaefer there. We don't even know if that's true, but he's just imagining it may well be because that's his projection. All right, let's quickly, before we get in any more trouble, let's do the Eye poll, who've actually got the big story.
Exactly. Their headline is UK population set to overtake France for the first time on record. It doesn't say when the record started. I assume it was quite some time ago, beyond 3 months at least. But the news here really is that 606,000 people have been the net high of immigration into the UK in the last 12 months. And it is huge. It's absolutely huge. No way you look... I mean, we always round these things up. There's 1 million people coming in. For me, It is. It's good. I think it's a good way to illustrate the whole England versus Britain versus France thing. France being 2.5 times the size of the UK, and they share a very similar population at the moment. 67 million people in England, in Great Britain, sorry, and 67.7 million in France. Of course, France is going to go down. A lot of the migration comes from France and comes here anyway.
Yes.
So at some point, it's going to take over. That's basic maths, Nick.
Yeah, well, it's a massive story. I mean, so 606,000 net migration, but the real figure, apparently, if it was calculated in the same way it was calculated last year, the real figure is actually 749,000. So it's a massive figure. A lot of it is these dependents of students who, postgraduate students, have all these, they bring over half their family to do these basically pointless courses, which are just to get a visa. So that's a sort of a racket. Now, it'd be 440,000 even without Ukraine and Hong Kong people. So, you know, people say, oh, it's Ukraine and Hong Kong, have a heart. But it would still be 440,000. So it's a massive problem. People have tried to ignore it for years, saying, oh, you're racist if you mention it. I think now, Lewis, we're at the point, and I'm going to ask you as an immigrant, but you're at the point now where it can't really be ignored anymore. What do you think?
I think it can't be ignored, but I have a feeling that this could actually be a good thing for Britain, that all these people may make Britain a better place. We will look back on this, and I don't believe this. But there is a chance. We don't know. It's the law of unintended consequences. You know, these are some quality people. They're people who make their way here. Listen, when I came to this country, no one thought that I was going to amount. Actually, they did think that was going to amount to much. And now I'm on GB News. So.
Regularly, don't forget that.
Well, thanks for giving us the balance, Lewis, because obviously none of us really think this is a good thing, but you've given the balance there. I mean, but the thing is, Paul, there's a bit of a myth that this helps the economy. It grows the economy, but it also grows the population, so you end up, in real terms, without any more money. And I think it's been a bit of a myth that it actually helps the economy. And do you think, Paul, this is the end for the Tories, because this is a massive blow. They were supposed to get immigration below 226,000. They've obviously massively failed to do that. Do you think there's going to be a protest? Are people going to vote reform and protest? What's going to happen?
I think it's the end of the Tories in the next 12 months anyway. I think you can feel those winds of change. Unless Labour start doing stupid things like talking about Brexit again, making it all about, I don't know, gender ideology, then they've got a great chance of getting in, maybe with a coalition with Lib Dems. I wish they'd stop politicising this story so we could have a proper debate on it. This has got nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, and I think a majority of people in this country are concerned, it's got very little to do with race. This could be 600,000 brain surgeons coming in. The point is, we don't have the capacity and the resources to cope with that level of immigration. So that's the point of the story. That's what we should be debating.
Right, exactly. It's pressure on services and so on, and it's like importing an extra Glasgow, and frankly, one is enough, let's be honest.
More than enough.
Throw in a quick pop at the Scottish, why not?
My kids are Scottish, or half Scottish.
My cousins are Scottish. It was purely comedy. It was.
I know Scots people.
Yes, you're some of your best friends. All right, let's do the Telegraph, Lewis.
Well, this is a story, I'm going to say in advance, I don't understand. Even though
That's all of them, though.
That's all of them. Some of them I understand, but I'm wrong. And this one I don't understand, and I might even turn out to be right. Anyway, mortgage rates shoot up amid bond chaos. And this is basically at what price the banks are loaning money out with the anticipation of getting it back. And if the banks think that it says mortgage rates shoot up, as I said that, it's at what do the people who have money, who are loaning money, think is going to happen in the future? And they think that the interest rates and that the inflation is going to go up. And so so they're raising their rates up. That the core inflation, which I don't really understand, it's some things but not other things, is 6.7 and 6.7%. But they're having the they're basically raising it up to 4.5%.
It's like watching Liam Halligan, just a slick explanation of economics. I'm the same as you, Lewis. We've just been handed this story, and I can understand economics for a very limited time. If I really get into it, I'm sort of like Mario with the invincibility. I get it for a dun dun dun, and it's gone out of my head because I just.
This is one of those things.
Can I say the key point, which is that Legal in General have said they're also going to stop making long-term investments in the UK debt market because of economic uncertainty. That's the key point. I thought. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah. I don't think Liam's quaking in his boots at home if he's watching. Hello, Liam. However, for me, once again, this is word soup. They use financial stories and economic stories for fear. They absolutely do. People don't know enough about this stuff, so it scares them. Essentially, what they're telling us here is the cost of borrowing for the people that can afford to borrow in this case, the banks or whoever it might be, has gone up slightly to 4.37%. Our base rate in this country is now at 4.5% anyway. So in terms of its material impact on borrowing as a standard mortgage borrower, it's not going to make that much difference. We're starting to level out to where we should be. Most people who know anything about economics, and that isn't us three, would tell us that the base rate was far too low for far too long. So we've ended up where we probably should be.
OK, well, I understood all of that. Let's do the Daily Star with Invasion of the Monster Jellyfish. Pretty much a story that does exactly what it does on the tin, although I wouldn't want to get jellyfish in a tin, Paul.
No, me either. Invasion of the Monster Jellyfish. Now, I think, arguably, I've had the two biggest stories of this segment so far.
Huge.
And both of them...
That's why. We trust you slightly more than Lewis.
Both of them are immigration stories. These big old jellyfish are coming over here, and this is science. This is science. I'll tell you what this is science, because during the summer, when the sun's at its warmest, our seas warm up. And the jellyfish think, we want holiday as well.
Yeah.
The British seas are now warm enough for us to go on holiday, so they come out over here. And people who want to lay around on blow-up unicorns are really up in arms about this because they might get a bit stung.
So you're saying they come over here, they bother our Lilo dwellers, they sting them. It's a classic immigration tale. Lewis, what do you think?
Well, it's one of a fear story. They're even saying that if it gets slightly hotter, it could entice the Portuguese man-of-war jellyfish with tentacles 160 feet long to come, and those are deadly to humans. So basically, they're like, the seas have jellyfish now, and there might be something even worse coming.
It wouldn't be the summer if we didn't mention Portuguese men of war, which, by the way, no one else calls them that anywhere else in the world.
I think the next lecture could be one on that, the Portuguese
could be.
man of war jellyfish. All right, that's it for part one. But coming up, racist police, Trump versus DeSantis, and we're finally beating Germany at something. See you in 2 minutes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before
and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with Lewis Schaefer, part of the immigration problem, and Paul Cox, Portsmouth born and bred. He's as English as St. George, and don't tell me he's Turkish. So let's crack on with the stories. So the Times now, and the police are being called racist again, but this time by themselves, Lewis.
That's right. It says Police Scotland Chief Constable calls force institutionally racist. And this is Sir Ian Livingstone. He was speaking at his final address to Scotland's police watchdog. I guess he's being interviewed or something. And he said that they basically said the police have institutional racism, sexism, misogyny, and discrimination within Police Scotland. And it made Hamza Yousaf, who's he's the First Minister. I thought he was somebody else.
He replaced Sturgeon. He was the person that was somehow possibly even worse than Sturgeon.
Yeah, well, listen, time will tell. And he made him happy to hear this. This is one of those, I mean, really, I don't even want to discuss it because to me, I think they did a survey.
Unfortunately, that is your job, but yeah.
I know, it is my job, but I know I'm going to say something that's horribly offensive.
That's every night with you, Lewis.
The police are horrible, but they're needed. They're needed. They're like women. They're horrible, but they're needed.
OK, I see what you were worried about now.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going to say that. Yeah, well, look, what do you think, Paul? This idea of institutional racism, I mean, the guy says here, this is Yousaf saying this, there is no doubt that institutional racism exists in our society. Well, there's massive doubt because the Sewell report said there wasn't, so it's highly contentious. I mean, of course, individual people have unfortunate experiences if they get stopped and searched. I'm sure it's not pleasant, etc. But is institutional racism really this massive problem? What do you think?
It's the easiest thing to say, to get a pat on the back at the moment.
Yeah.
A couple of things are happening here that we should address. He's not leaving till August, and this is the last time he's going to speak. Not only is this his last time he's going to speak, this is his parting gift to whoever comes in to say, by the way, they're all racist, I'm off, I'll see you later. He's going to do absolutely nothing about the problem. He's presided over this institutional racism, which, perhaps there is, perhaps there isn't. We are continually redefining what the truth is. In fact, we're continually redefining what racism is. And it doesn't matter how many times we see reports to say we're a pretty friendly country, that's what riles people the most. They're like, we're not that friendly, we're institutionally racist. We need to say that again.
I know, it's so frustrating because we are one of the most tolerant countries in the world. Everyone knows. I think we have a decent shot at most tolerant, least racist country in the world. Very annoying. Like you say, it's a weird tactic, isn't it? Calling out, it's like I came in here and said, yeah, you're all racist, I'm leaving in August. Like, the next few months are going to be pretty rough. But the other thing that bothered me, Lewis, is it's not... there's even an argument with the grooming gang scandal, and you could argue with the recent Mizzy thing that actually there is a certain protection because of political correctness. So you could argue with the opposite of institutionally racist. What do you think?
I think you could make that point, and I think the police. I'm no big fan of the police. I think we need the police. You need to have the police there to call. But
it feels like mere moments ago you said they were horrible.
They are, as I said, as I made that kind of, which was a joke. They're horrible, but you need them. Right. Horrible, but you need them, and it's just like what happened, that horrible situation in Cardiff, where the two kids died, and then the police just seemed to have lied about it, that they weren't following the guy. I think this is, as a foreigner who's moved to this country, this is an incredible, tolerant country. How the people have taken Lewis Schaefer into their hearts. They're amazing.
That is proof.
That is proof. But the funniest thing for an American to hear is how you name your organization. It's called Police Scotland. It's like an imperative. Would you police Scotland, please? That's your job. It's called Police Scotland. They're Scotland. Go police it.
Yeah, that was funny. I think just for balance... That was funny, Lewis. I think for balance... I mean, I would have laughed, but I'm sort of dead inside. All I can do now is say, that was funny. Confirmed. But I would just like to say, just for balance, I'm sure a lot of the police are great people. We know they've become a bit captured by wokeness, but they are, I'm sure, a lot of great people. Let's say that for balance and do the Telegraph and the SNP's missing money scandal. Now, I checked my account today, and it turns out I'm also missing money, Paul. I wonder
if the SNP have taken it, Nick. You should investigate further. SNP will not to pressure police on missing money scandal. Absolutely fantastic. Police Scotland Chief Constable says he will fiercely resist any attempt to bring political pressure in a thinly veiled attack. What is remarkable about this to me is he has to say this. So we are in a position now where Scottish police are so concerned And it's so inevitable that the SNP's integrity is so bad that they will inevitably try this. He has to, before he does anything, come out and say that we're not going to take it. I mean, what a way for the rest of the world, the rest of the UK even, to look in on Scotland. For me, the SNP have taken Scottish politics from something that was relatively arguably some of the best political positions in all of Europe, and just nosedived it into the ground month after month, year after year. And this whole Nicola Sturgeon thing now, it's just highlighted what a mess it really is.
Yeah, I was almost surprised they went so hard at this, because you sort of assume the SNP has such an iron grip on Scotland. You were almost surprised that they were investigating it so thoroughly. But Police Scotland is saying its investigation was proportionate. What do you think, Lewis? Was it actually extra harsh, or was it just normal police work?
Well, it's interesting, because where I come from, if I have to mention this again, is that the city is in control of the police. So the mayor has some control over the police department. And you get the feeling in Scotland that there's no control. That who does the chief constable work for? Does he work for the government there? Does he, or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about these stories is it really is a worrying insight. We know the police at the highest level are political. I mean, you just got to look at the Met. Their boss is essentially Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, who is political by nature, and we constantly see that borne out in all this wokery stuff. Being a policeman is not easy, but what to do is very, very simple. There is a law that says this must be followed, so you need to enforce that, and just don't be a wally.
But the buck stops here. Where does the buck stop? The police department should be under political control, because somebody should be responsible if the police don't do their job. In America, the DAs are elected, the police chief is appointed by the mayor, so it's the mayor's responsibility if the police aren't doing well. It's not like free-floating out there like that in this country, like the Metropolitan Police. They're like on their own. No, it's somebody should be responsible.
OK, well, we have to move on. But I personally like the police when they're investigating Sturgeon, less so when they're throwing a working man to the ground because he doesn't want some posh people sat in the road. That's me. Let's do The Independent now. And Ron DeSantis is having an issue with his nickname. It's not a problem for the big dog, though, Lewis.
Yeah, well, DeSantis, and he laughs off Trump's endless list of mocking nicknames. He says, just call me a winner, because he announced last night that he was running for the Republican nomination for president, and Trump called him Meatball Ron.
Trump claims he will never. Trump says, I'll never call him Meatball Ron, the fake news claim. That kind of already calls him Meatball Ron, so it's quite clever.
Well, you could consider that to be anti-Italian, and Italians take that stuff kind of seriously. Ron DeSanctimonious, Tiny D, Ron Dishonest. He calls him Rob in the tweets that he did. Did you see this?
Yeah.
Rob, because he made a mistake once and just said, just keep on calling him Rob. I love Trump, but Trump's day is done.
Completely wrong, unfortunately, Lewis, because, well, not unfortunately, fortunately for Trump fans, because, as you saw, the Twitter Spaces with DeSantis was a complete flop. He came on Twitter, he said, I'm going to do my big announcement, but he did it on Twitter Spaces, which is a dodgy bit of tech they haven't quite figured out. And obviously, I like Musk, obviously, but it was and I like DeSantis, but it was a complete mess. It broke down, there was echoes, there was people muting themselves, it was very muted in general, the atmosphere.
But that was, excuse me, and then Paul can speak. That was, because I know something about this. Is it wrong for him to have trusted the richest, most successful business person in the history of the world, to run a platform that's going to work? It isn't DeSantis' fault. It's Musk's fault. It's Twitter people.
Either way, it was a very poor launch. And the funny thing is here, he's saying, just call me winner. He kind of sounds like Ron Burgundy, Paul, which is another Ron. And by the way, did you see Trump Jr., after the failed Twitter space, posted Disaster? So Disaster's another nickname he's got now. What do you think?
I mean, say what you like about Trump, but he's a comedian. The man is brilliant.
Yeah. Yes.
When it comes to this sort of stuff, he is absolutely brilliant. He's already got him on the ropes. Nick and I were talking about this before. Nick brought to my attention this Twitter streaming issue, which I hadn't seen, so I went and had a look at it. And it was, optics-wise, an absolute disaster. And Yeah, technology, there's risk mitigation that could have been put in place there, and that is don't do that. Just do what Trump does. Stand in front of 10,000 adoring fans with your arms are wide, brilliant lighting, saying loads of funny bants, and you'll smash it. And this is just fodder for Trump.
But he is not Trump.
No.
Number one. And the mainstream media and the Democrats want Trump to be chosen. Because he's the easiest candidate for them to win, because there's a lot of hostility towards
It's a risky tactic, though. I mean, I think, just lastly on this, I mean, I've said this for a while. I said it to Toby Young on my podcast, The Weekly Skeptic. He was very pro-DeSantis. A lot of people are, because he was good on policy in Florida. But I said Trump's charisma is just next level, very hard to compete with. Someone posted on Twitter today their wife hadn't even heard of DeSantis, whereas Trump is one of the most famous people that's ever lived. So very hard to beat that, and I think DeSantis will struggle. But anyway, we're going to move on and do the Telegraph now with a story about Germany. Now, we all know it's 2 world wars and 1 World Cup, but now we can add 1 recession, Paul.
Absolutely.
We're winning.
This is incredible, really, considering the rhetoric we've seen over the last few years. Soaring energy prices have pushed Germany into recession, while Britain has escaped one, upending the forecasts made by economists at the start of the year. Of course it has. Of course it has. I mean, at what point do we stop listening to experts? Because these experts at the beginning of the year who made these points made them from a biased perspective. None of these people, they essentially wanted Europe to succeed and they wanted the UK not to succeed. So all they've told us is what they personally think about the Brexit situation. And then all of a sudden, of course, both economies are rubbish. Are absolutely rubbish. No one comes out of this a winner. We're slightly better because we're slightly
careful, Paul. We do come out of it a winner. We did win. Now, it's a narrow win, but so is a penalty shootout. We narrowly beat Germany. I'm taking this win. What do you think, Lewis?
I think Paul points out the very important thing is there's a lot of political considerations in predictions and newspaper pieces, and this belief system that Germany is amazing is just to make us British people look bad. Is that what Paul is saying?
It's kind of what I'm saying. It depends on where you're seeing it from. Nothing's neutral unless you're listening to GB News, of course. But nothing is neutral anymore. So we're just getting told what people feel about, which is what Lewis does.
Yeah. Bottom line, we beat Germany. That's it for part 2. But coming up, poppy smuggling, sheep stealing, and Gary Lineker. I can't decide which of those is worse. See you after the break.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with The Telegraph. And Gary Lineker has vowed to keep saying stupid, annoying stuff, Paul.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought, Nick? Gary Lineker vows to keep making political statements in new headache for BBC bosses. Match of the Day host, who sparked recent impartiality row, says, being told not to do something will drive me to do it even further. He sounds like a 14-year-old boy, doesn't he?
He does.
Oh, I don't care if it falls off, I'm going to keep playing with it. This man, right, he is the archetypal result of social media. He's constantly being told that his views are important in some way, so he genuinely believes they are. None of our views are that important. We don't.
Mine are.
Well, of course, outside of Lewis. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I do agree. Perhaps we do want to hear different things from people who present Match of the Day, but I don't want to hear this stuff. Just get on and do it. Get a podcast. If you can get a podcast as good as your podcast, Nick, he can then talk about it. But until then, just do Match of the Day.
Thanks, mate. I've got 2 podcasts. But yeah, Gary Lineker does. He actually produces all the podcasts, doesn't he? The Alistair Campbell one, and the rest is Politics Rested.
I didn't know that.
Goalhanger produced them. Yeah. So he's behind all of it. But yeah, this was very annoying. I mean, imagine if we caused endless headaches for GB News. How long would we last? Seconds. It's ridiculous. He's abusing his position. And this thing about it'll drive me to do it further. I could respect that if it was kind of like, I don't respect COVID lockdowns or something like that. If you were genuinely in the out group and you had a rebellious contrarian spirit, the reason I can't respect it with Lineker is he is part of what Matt Goodwin would call the new elite. It's kind of absurd that an ex-footballer is, but he's clearly part. He's punching down, if you want to use that old comedy phrase, isn't he, Lewis?
But he's allowed. You know what? So he's part of the new elite. He should be allowed to have an opinion. I disagree with you, Paul, and you, Nick, on this. This is so British, because what the BBC is trying to do is trying to present itself as being impartial and balanced, when the truth is it just represents the state. It's the state broadcaster. It's completely propaganda. And they don't want him to upset anybody, to make people think that it's not balanced and not impartial.
Right.
Okay? So he should be allowed to say whatever he wants to say. There are more people in this country working for the BBC than any other organization except the NHS. Okay? The millions of people working for the BBC. And
I thought you were going to say the centralisation of everything there. You were close.
Yeah.
It's one of Lewis's many catchphrases, in case the viewer doesn't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it is slightly relevant, though, Lewis, because he is the TV licence. Lineker has this complicated freelance contract, but the TV licence is extracted from the general public, and that does change the relationship, Paul.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't disagree with you entirely, Lewis. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to silence Lineker. I think Lineker should be heard, like all other Wallies.
No, you said he should be silenced. You said nobody
I just don't want to hear
the guy.
I personally don't want to. I personally don't want to hear it.
You don't want him to be silenced, but you don't want to.
I mean, he admits himself that the BBC can't be impartial. He admits that within this. He says it's very difficult for a Tim Davie to be impartial. I don't even know what he bothers trying, essentially. But, like Nick says, it's because it's a tax. It's a stealth tax on the British public, and we're paying for this, and we'd rather not hear it.
The British people are paying for their own propaganda served to them.
Yeah.
That is a humiliation upon a humiliation. We're being lectured to by these people, and yet they make.
Yeah, I was going to say on that. I mean, it makes it harder for the BBC. There are people there working hard, trying to be impartial. People like Gary Lineker make it harder for them. But then again, the BBC aren't helping themselves with things like BBC Verify, which is this absurd thing that's going to call us all conspiracy theorists for just having an opinion. But anyway, we've got to move on and do the Mail. And Cornell University are running a 5-hour course teaching white students to be better allies. I'd honestly rather take Lewis Schaefer's diet course, Lewis.
Well, my diet course can save your life. I'm not sure this thing can save your life. Eat meat, basically. That's what it is. Don't eat vegetables. Cornell University's medical school has raised eyebrows with its new offering, a free course on how to become a better ally to people of color. And if you don't know what the Cornell University is, it's only one of the largest hospital systems in the country, probably, maybe even the world. And it's based up in Ithaca, New York, where Cornell University is, but it has like tons of medical schools and hospitals that it controls. It's quite, and it's trying to be all diversity, equity, and whatever that is.
Inclusion.
And I tell you, it said something very interesting, which I thought was very funny. Did you read this? I'm not even sure that I could read this. It's so shockingly racist.
Go on.
It said 20 years ago, they said one of the examples in the course was they asked people this question, right? And then they said, what do you do if you're faced with this question? And one of these questions was, 20 years ago when you were 17, you made a Facebook post saying you wanted to
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, you made a dodgy Facebook post. But what's hilarious about that is they say you made a post ages ago, and one of your co-workers has brought it up with HR. Firstly, they're a scumbag, right? They're an absolutely horrible person. And then it says the correct answer is to apologise and explain that it's not you who you are now, and you'll take some steps to further educate yourself. It's one of these creepy buzzwords they use, Paul.
Yeah.
This whole thing is a giant red flag. I mean, it says here, there's a shocking sentence as well. The faculty realised there was a need for skill-based virtual learning opportunities focused on racial allyship. There's never a need for that, Paul.
Not at all, not at all. And by the way, 20 years ago on social media, what are they quoting? Friends Reunited.
Right, MySpace,
yeah, exactly. I mean, do you know how to be a good ally? Is to stop treating people based on the colour of their skin. It's not important. I know that's an outrageous thing to say in 2023.
Because you're a white guy, you know. I mean,
how do you know that?
Well, I'm definitely a white guy, and I don't identify any differently. But I don't identify. That's my point.
Maybe you should identify.
So I don't believe I should not be able to say something because of the colour of my skin, and I don't think we should treat anybody differently because of their colour of their skin.
Well, that's a racist comment. But the funny thing is, it's like you said, Nick. Apology. That their correct answer is to apologise and explain this is not who you are. They suggest apologising when we know you should never apologize. Never apologize. Say, I don't know who typed this. Somebody hacked my machine back then. They don't want to.
You know what? You're absolutely right, Lewis. We've seen time and again that you apologise, it's just a red rag to a bull. It gets worse. Yeah. Never apologise and never do this course, is my advice. And it's just sad that the elite universities are all falling for this woke nonsense. We talk about it a lot, but it is very real. Cornell, another one going down the pan. Shocking.
Ivy League.
Yeah. Ivy League, exactly. Let's do the Mail now. And the Church of Scotland are apologising for slavery. I had no idea they were still doing it, Paul.
Oh, my God.
They've still got slaves in the Church of Scotland.
Yeah, well, they must do. That's what they must do. It must be today, because why else would you apologise for it? The Church of Scotland is to formally apologise for its historic links to slavery, as it admits elements of its past are now viewed with deep regret. Of course they are. In other news, I am going to apologise to the French for Nelson giving them a whopping in the Napoleonic Wars. I mean, I had nothing to do with it, but I am sorry if he died. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. It's got to a point now where how far do we go back? Where do we we just accept these things were bad? No one's wandering around in the UK today saying, I wish slavery had come back. Nobody is saying that. Everyone's glad it's done. We've played a massive part in stopping it. Why do we need to keep apologising? Stop doing it.
I know, I do feel like a broken record on this, but England ended slavery. Slavery goes on now. There are millions of slaves alive today. You know, Spanish, Muslims, enslaved Slavs, that's where the word slave comes from, and they were white. You know, we had Barbary, we had the Ottoman Empire. I mean, I guess, why are we uniquely responsible for slavery? Isn't everyone tired of this, Lewis?
Well, it's also from the apology school. You think you're just apologising and make people laugh. I think it's Scottish people, because the weather is so bad up there. It makes them crazy. And my kids are Scottish. I love them so much. They've inherited a little bit of something.
Okay.
They're doer.
Well, we're running out of time on this section, so let's move on and do the Telegraph. And 3 of the king's sheep have been stolen in a devastating story from the 17th century, Paul. It's just that the king's sheep stolen just sounds like a ridiculous old
It does sound, well, it is ridiculous. The story is actually ridiculous. Animal rights protesters steal king sheep. The animal rising activists said that better or space. I don't think they need a safe space. But this is how posh and privileged these activists are. They genuinely believe they can provide a better standard of living for these sheep than the king can in his own garden.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is basically these sheep were going to slaughter at some point. A lot of sheep do, once they've given all their wool or whatever it might be. But you know what? Imagine pulling out dandelions from a vegan's back garden and saying, I'm saving this from being made into fair trade sandals. This is where we're at now. This is mental.
I know, they're living an amazing life. I mean, even farmers will tell you, anyone will tell you this, like this, you know, they have a good life, and otherwise they probably, why would we even be keeping them otherwise? And it says that they have this, they're fed a forage-only diet, which apparently is the best thing. They're taking care of highly experienced shepherds. And it says here, but these people who've rescued them, these slightly strange people, say that there's 3 beautiful lambs who will now live their lives to the fullest. What are they going to do? Like start an online business? It's absolutely ridiculous. They're going to go on OnlyFans.
Well, it's ridiculous.
And one of them's 33 years old. There's 2 of them that are 23. I can forgive that. One's 33. I mean,
You
get a
should know
husband.
better. You should
Come
know
on,
better.
Lewis.
Yeah. Well, you say they're being fed a forage-only diet. Well, sheep only eat forage. They don't eat grain, number one. And number two, that if you take there's only 2 ways for a sheep to go in the wild. One is either we kill them and make nice food out of it, or they basically fall down, they break their legs, and a wolf just rips them apart.
OK, well, on that gruesome image, we've got to go. That's part 3 done. But coming up in the final section, Rishi goes nuclear on AI, the woman who feels no pain, and why ketamine might be the answer to all your problems. See you in a minute.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the eye and Rishi Sunak on an existential risk. And it's not the immigration figures, Lewis.
Well, it's Rishi Sunak wants nuclear-style safety rules for AI as Prime Minister acknowledges existential risk over AI. And this is what this story is. This is just public relations for AI companies. That's what this is. Is that the guy who created the OpenAI chief, Sam Altman, he met with Rishi Sunak, with other people in AI, and he warned that advanced form of the technology, which is just basically computer stuff, should be handled the same way as nuclear material. He's basically saying his own product is stronger than dirt. You must buy AI. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, I question this, Paul. I mean, can anyone really stop AI? When I watched Terminator 2, I didn't sort of think, you know who we need here? Rishi Sunak. He'll sort this out. What do you think?
Well, I've never thought that in my life, but I agree with Rishi on this. You and I disagree on this. Quite the debate we had outside. Because I think AI is terrifying. I mean, we have gone from... How fast, by the way, have we gone from little to no AI to AI that can write Shakespeare and start a nuclear war?
Yeah.
Just, you know, that's how fast it's gone. AI didn't... I know AI... We had this debate earlier. AI did exist pre-2023, but it feels like in 2023, it's gone from next to nothing to everyone's got access to it, and it's all powerful.
So somebody comes in, right, into school with a paper that's written like Shakespeare, and that paper is believed. A friend of mine, his name is Dan Natterman, he tells a joke about a guy who had a fake Rolex watch. And he showed his friend, he said to his friend, he said, "Does my Rolex watch look real?" And his friend said, "No, it doesn't look real." I said, "What makes it not look real?" He said, "It's the guy wearing the AC/DC T-shirt wearing the watch."
Yes.
So that's what this thing is. They're just going to bring somebody in and they're going to say to him, you wrote a paper that sounded like Shakespeare. Can you do something similar right here in front of us? And the answer is no. So there's nothing to worry.
Oh, so it's kind of all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, I was going to say the thing that makes it not a real Rolex is he's your mate. Sorry about that one. Let's move on and do the Times with a story about Rishi Sunak's dark secret, Paul.
Oh, my goodness. Too much of an insight here. Rishi Sunak has said that he reads Jilly Cooper novels as a means of escapism. Now, if you don't know what a Jilly Cooper novel is, the best way to describe it is like soft porn from the 1930s. It's all riding trousers and whips. And it's the last thing I want to be thinking of at any point is Rishi escaping with this stuff. And it's also the sort of stuff you don't say at work. You know, if I said that out the back there, it might be one thing, but you guys would just rib me for the rest of my life. But, you know, when he's being interviewed, why does he say, "I like Jilly Cooper novels"?
You're saying it's a kind of boomer version of 50 Shades of Grey is what I'm hearing. I mean,
it is. Have you ever read it? I've never read any, but I...
You hear, yeah. I mean, I've seen your collection of books, but, yeah, look, I mean, it is a bit ridiculous, Lewis. I mean, Theresa May famously said that the worst thing she did was run through a field of wheat. There's just a little bit of a field of wheat vibe. It's like, it's a bit too lame. Like, Sunak, I quite like Sunak. Whatever you think of his policy, he never seems like a bad guy. And he says things like he likes Star Wars, and you go, oh, yeah, that's all right. And he likes football. You think, yeah, he probably does.
Yeah.
But when he says Jilly Cooper, that's a bit weird, isn't it?
What is he supposed to say? I like Pornhub. I like you porn. What is he supposed to say? What do you do? What do you do to relax? Oh, I like to get... It's a very heavy porn.
But he didn't have to bring up romantic novels at all, though. He could have said Star Wars. He always says Star Wars, football, Succession. He likes the show Succession.
You know what it's like? It's like when you ask me these questions. Am I ready for them? I'm not ready for the questions. But, you know, I got to come up with something. Maybe he didn't know this.
What are you doing for the 4 hours we're sat out there?
Yeah, he's like you. He hadn't researched anything. He tried saying it's a non-story. They pressed him and he said Jilly Cooper. I see how it happens. Let's do the Mail then. And it turns out the antidote to depression is hard street drugs, Lewis.
Yeah, this is the Daily Mail. It says that ketamine is better than the gold standard therapy for treating depression. Trial shows sedative lifts half the patients out of blues after antidepressant meds failed. But, I mean, this is an horrific story because basically this is just one more story where they're promoting drug use for people. The other day we did a story in the Times which said that they were promoting magic mushrooms. Did you see that?
I didn't see that, but it gets promoted a lot, actually. Microdosing of magic mushrooms is supposed to be very good for
exactly, because number one, they want They want us to be on drugs.
You know what? I never thought I'd say this, but I agree with Lewis Schaefer. I mean, there's constant stories about legalising weed, mushrooms, now it's ketamine. It says here, Paul, among those who were offered ketamine via an intravenous strip, 55% said their symptoms had eased. Well, yeah, because they're on ketamine and they're just mashed out of their brains. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I would take a guess that none of us here are drug takers, really. Correct, yeah, I'm not, and I've never taken ketamine.
Listen, speak for yourself.
But I understand. I mean, you're more bohemian than I am, Lewis, but I understand it's a horse tranquiliser. This trial has taught us that semi-conscious people don't feel so sad anymore. That's not a trial.
You're right.
No, that's non-news.
That's that story.
That's
Sorry, Liz, we've only got a minute, so we're going to quickly do the Daily Star and a woman who never feels pain. Now, if we could just find one who doesn't inflict pain, would be laughing, Paul. Am I right?
Yeah, British woman never feels pain thanks to a genetic mutation, leaving scientists baffled. Jo Cameron feels almost no pain and says she never feels anxious or afraid. Right. How do you get... By the way, the piece of information I just missed out trying to be too quick is she is 65. How do you get to 65 without not knowing you don't feel pain?
It's almost like Bruce Willis in that Unbreakable. He didn't notice for ages, but that, to be fair, was a fictitious movie. Lewis, what do you think?
It's bull. It's bull. It's bull. She wants attention, and she's willing to say, oh, I don't feel any pain. I've met tons of people like that. Oh, you can do anything you want to me, and then nothing's going to happen. You don't know. It's her word. How do they know she doesn't feel pain? You don't know. So this is a lie.
Yeah, OK. All right, so they cut to me slightly confused earlier, but I was just thinking about the concept of not feeling pain. We're all in very existential pain every day. We're comedians. That is pretty much it for the show, so let's take another quick look at Friday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has, will anyone stop the eco-clowns? That would be nice. The Telegraph, mortgage rates shoot up amid bond chaos. We all totally understood that one tonight. The Eye, UK population set to overtake France for the first time on record. That's the massive immigration story. Financial Times, ministers look at reshaping pensions lifeboat fund to give boost to business. No idea. The Express, Rishi, I get it, you want migration down. And the Daily Star has invasion of the monster jellyfish, which is exactly what you think it is. And those were the front pages. That's it for tonight. Thanks to Paul and Lewis. I'm back tomorrow with Andrew and Leo, so tune in at 11. If you're watching at 5 a.m, then please stay tuned for breakfast. But for me, it's good night, good morning, and God bless.
Paul, can you do me a favour and not me?
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the